What is empathy? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is empathy? Empathy is the ability for a human to take on and feel the emotions, the mindset, and the perspective of another human being. It's a unique ability that we have, and it's one that has been demonstrated ever since the inception of the human species. It plays a fundamental role in human evolution, interaction, sociological development, and certainly is one of the most important aspects and cornerstones of moral philosophy and moral psychology. People have discussed it over the ages because it seems to be, it's difficult to pin down in scientific terms. And it's essentially the job description for actors taking on another person's perspective. And it's one of the most important human skills that we have. Empathy, the ability to take on another person's mindset, be in their shoes, feel their emotions, know their minds. And recently, in modern days, scientists have discovered what they think might be the biological mechanism for it, which are mirror neurons, which are cells in the brain that do what they say. They mirror, when they come into contact with other humans, they mirror what's going on in their minds and what their neurons are doing. So it naturally puts us on a footing to empathize with people around us, which seems to be the biological mechanism and catalyst for the ability to empathize. And it's important to understand that empathizing does not imply any action. That's compassion. We'll talk about that in another video. But empathy is simply the skill set to be able to put yourself into another person's situation and come to some understanding of their mental state, their emotional state, and to feel it and to understand it to some degree. Now, it's a very interesting skill, and in terms of the evolutionary functioning that brought it about, we look at hunter-gatherer humans, and it becomes pretty easy to see that when we're traveling around in packs and trying to survive as a collectivist group, especially prior to the formation of a really refined language, a verbal language, or even a body language, there was clearly another form of understanding occurring before the definement of refined languages. And now that we're this far down in the human evolutionary sequence, we can look back and, looking through history of the different levels of human evolution, we can rightly say that empathy has always been a trait of the human being. And understanding that, when we look back to the formations pre-civilization humans, Homo sapiens, it makes a lot of sense when we look at them that their initial links to stay together, like why would they stay together in packs? How did they know to collectivize themselves for survival, other than just mental calculations of the environment or like some sort of fear-based huddling together, which can only keep a group together for so long? And that also doesn't account for how leadership positions within the group would evolve, how determinations of wellness or sickness or utility to the group, all of these things, they seem sort of mysterious and hard to pin down, especially pre-good language, until we understand that empathy has is a built-in feature and skill of human beings. And then when we look back, I think it becomes very clear that these initial groups of human beings, these initial groups of human beings seem to be relying nearly exclusively on empathy to do the majority of information transfer between perspectives of the humans in the group. And when we really think about it, empathy has all of the foundational mechanics of telepathy. And in a way, even more. If you think telepathy is only a mental transfer, now we're talking about an emotional transfer, and even more than a transfer, we're talking about the ability to actually sort of put yourself, astral project yourself into the other person's position in a non-egotistic way, a non-egoist way, and for that information to be valid. And so it may be the case, and when you realize that so much of human evolution occurred outside of controlled civilization and was subject to pure natural selection evolution, and that these internal traits were really the ones getting honed, we can see that these groups of human going through the natural reality were certainly honing and perfecting their empathy, whether they realized it or not. It became the primary survival mechanism until refined language and until refined levels of management came into existence. Now, in the modern day, empathy, which is this ability to put yourself in the other person's position and feel their emotions, understand their mindset, becomes the basis for judgment, for moral assessment. And as we know, in groups, the distribution of justice, which is the process of putting someone in a position of moral correctness, really becomes fundamentally based on, for sure, some evidentiary evidence and empirical evidence, but really the core of it comes down to the ability to empathize for the moral agent who is in charge of the situation and in charge of distributing justice to have empathy at their core. That becomes their most important internal skill in order to gauge and calibrate and distribute justice. Because justice is a moral assessment. It is an energy derived from moral assessment. It is a currency derived from moral assessment, and that moral assessment is best arrived at through empathy. Now we see examples in the world, of course, the modern world, where empathy, that's the good side of empathy, and we've also seen the bad side of empathy. We've seen where, for instance, in modern militaries, the goal of a boot camp or the goal of military training is to get rid of the empathy. It's an express goal of militaries to diminish empathy, to demonize other humans, to make it so that you don't empathize with the other humans. And in fact, if at all possible, if you cannot completely diminish or remove the empathy for another human being, for a military person, then the next best thing you can do is to weaponize the empathy. You put yourself in the position of your enemy so that you can better understand their heart, mind, and soul, so that you can use it against them. And history books are, just littered with that, with examples of that. We also know in studies of criminology that one of the main factors for people who do horrific crimes, be they serial killers, serial rapists, serial embezzlers, anything from blue collar to white collar crime, anything where there's mass strategic exploitation of other human beings by one person, the consistent analysis of that person is that their empathy is either missing, damaged, or distorted. Problems with empathy are almost always a linchpin issue for human beings who do not harmonize with other human beings. In fact, I think it's safe to say that empathy is the chief instrument for harmonizing human beings with other human beings. And it's a process. First, it helps to realize you have to have a sense of self first. You have to know that you are thinking your thoughts and be solid in your perspective. And then that opens the gates to empathizing with other humans and going, well, if I think and I am and I have my feelings and my perspective, well, then it bears the reason that other human beings are as well. And then at that point, then you can empathize with them because you can safely maintain your own perspective and feelings and situation, and then you can play yourself in their position to get a view of what they're doing. It's a basic human essential skill that is built into us. In fact, I would say that you have to do a lot of work, a lot of force has to be exerted on a human being to diminish the power of empathy that's built into each one of us. So most of our modern life is built around empathy, whether it's good uses of empathy or what we would call bad uses of empathy, moral applications of the understanding of what empathy is, or immoral applications of what empathy is. But we know that it exists, we know that it's real, and we know that it's very powerful as an instrument of interrelation, information transfer, and a catalyst for moral behavior. Or certainly catalyzes or brings to the forefront moral decisions for the human involved using the empathy. And we know the amplification of empathy or the diminishment of empathy has profound consequences. So empathy, we've all got it. It can be used for good or bad. It's very powerful. It's in each one of us. Well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found this helpful, and have fun.